Welcome back to Inspired Inc., the CWS podcast, a show where we promote indie comic creators and become inspired by what they create and their journey of creating it. I'm your host, Brandon Bloxdorf, and today on the show we have Braxton Cosby, CEO of Star Child Comics, which is the comic imprint of Cosby Media Production. And we talk about navigating large universes, bringing together your story and collaborating with other creators, and expanding into other mediums. All this and so much more on today's Inspired Inc.
With Comix Wellspring.
Dude, that's the exciting part too, is really trying to deliver like it's what you're saying. People just look at indie and be like, oh, it's going to be like a tier lower than you would like a DC book or a Marvel
Right.
book. When honestly, like a lot of the time, some of our books are even higher quality than what they spit out
Oh
under some of
yeah.
their main books, you know?
Yep.
It's like I just got that absolute Batman. Actually, I haven't read it yet, but like I was just, I gotta check it out. I'm curious about it. And I was going through it and I was filling the paper and everything, and I was like, some of this is cool, but like it's insane like what our paper quality is in
Exactly.
comparison.
No, for real. For real. And I just did that. I just got the Thundercats. They did their
Oh, yeah.
rebrand, and their paper quality is like, you can tell that they just, wherever they got this done, probably in China or something like
Yeah,
that.
right. Yeah, yeah.
It is not that great at all.
And that's the thing too, when you're choosing like a printer, and I see why people, make that decision sometimes, like, oh, I'm going to print overseas because of like
Right.
pricing and all that. But like, if there's an issue of any sort, like then you're waiting months and months to correct that, or you're just stuck with
Mhm.
bad stock. Where here, you could reach out to any one of us and we'll help correct the issue. We'll talk
Right.
about it. We'll try to understand where the error was and how to, move forward and whatnot. And that's where things can get like kind of tricky sometimes. But I know what's cool about having a printer in the States is that, we're such a small team too. We really are a mom and pop shop. There's about 10 employees at Comix
Yeah.
Wellspring, including me. And like the other, and two other ones of us are remote. So there's really like just like, 6 or 7
That's
people in
awesome.
the office. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as many as we print and as many times as we do get, a mistake or something does happen, it's very minimal in the thousands of orders we get and hundreds and thousands of comics we print. So we do understand there's going to be a fumble, but it's like, how do we fix that? How do we correct and how do we work with the creator to make sure both sides are happy at the end of, whatever thing?
Right.
But you really can't do that if you have a printer overseas. There's probably
Mhm.
like no communication, no
Right.
understanding. There's, most times probably even a language barrier that's pretty insane to
Yep.
like get stuff corrected. So having creators like you being in that forefront and showing that superior quality, it's really rad to see you guys compare it to other people as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
And you have like so much out there too. Like I can understand why what you're looking for is like superior quality. Like tell us a little bit about everything you've put out and how did we go from novels and where did the novels come from and how did that bleed into comics?
Yeah, so like I said, we really what kind of got it going was like I teamed up with 5 other authors, and we just wanted to like create our own superhero universe. It kind of started off with Kyle Champion. He had written this story called Majesties of Canaan, with these like 7 superheroes, or 7 soldiers who come across this. They're in war in the Middle East, and they run into this cave, and they come upon this angel, basically, who has this pool of this black fluid, and he's like, "Listen, you guys want to get an advantage? Step into the pool, and it's going to kind of accentuate your certain traits that you have. Like one guy used to run track, so he was fast, so he got faster. This one girl was really good with hand-to-hand combat, so she got like these katana blades. Another girl had like some Chinese stars, so they kind of shoot those out her hands. And other guy got these real strong arms, and they just became saturated in this stuff called oromite. So we kind of went with oromite, similar to what Marvel does with vibranium. So oromite became our thing, almost like adamantium. It's
Yeah.
indestructible. And so his story was really intriguing. He was a good friend of mine. And then I met another young man named Keyshawn Dodds, and he had this Menzuo project that he had launched like maybe 10 years before. And, this story about this young guy who's a prince on his own planet comes to Earth, and he's kind of orphaned. Now he lives with this family, doesn't know that he's anything other than just a little regular teenager. And then over time, it opens up as things are revealed to him. where he actually can kind of enter these two worlds where he can actually learn from his people back on his planet, and then also stay in the same world where he is on Earth. And so he starts to understand his legacy. And so I was like thinking, like, man, this is great. And I had written the Starcross trilogy at that point, and I was able to reach young girls, but I wasn't really reaching the demographic of boys. And so right around that time was when Marvel and DC really started picking up at the movies. And so things had really picked up with superheroes. I'm like, man, here's an opportunity for me to jump in here and try to grab this male audience with superheroes. So I started writing my own superhero series, and I just thought it would be all great if we just kind of referred to each other in our world. So we created this whole world, and we called it the Cosby Media Productions Dedicated Superhero Universe. So it's the CMPDSU. And from there, ran into another man who was writing, named Lawrence St. John. He had his Metatron series, which was more like Christian-based inspired, but it was really still cool because he had these powers that just evolved with each book. And then I also met Daniel Payton, who had written for us already The Legacy of Dragon Wand, which is this great fantasy series. It's up to like 7 books now in that series. And he had the Bark series. So now we had all these superheroes that we could bring together in this universe. And then we all had our own kind of series, like our own separate series. So the Cape, I ended up getting 2 books in that series. Keyshawn has 4 books in Menzuo. Kyle has 2 with Majesty of Canaan. Daniel Payton has 3 with Bark, and then Metatron is up to 4. So I said, guys, from here, we need to do something new. Let's add comics. Do you guys want to do comics? And they were like, oh, that's actually a cool idea. You know, they were like, well, what do we just reboot? I said, no. Let's go forward, because we want to add to the storytelling. We don't want to tell a whole new story. So wherever you're going to go with your next book, make it a comic. So everybody did that. We ended up running this huge Kickstarter back in at the end of 20, to raise enough funds to get all of our first issues funded. And we did. We were successful getting those done. So we got them all done. We found a new, everybody kind of had a different team who was working on their comic books. We had Marcelo Salazar, who worked on Menzuo and Majesties. We had, let me make sure I get this right. Oh, he also did Metatron. And when we had the team, I had Bruno Obdius, which I don't know if you know Bruno, but he's
might sound familiar.
Bruno has moved on to bigger and better things. He actually does Cyborg for DC now.
Oh, wow.
So I was really grateful to get him when I got him.
Yeah, that's sick.
And
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we also had another group out of Atlanta who worked on Bark series. And that's God, they're gonna kill me. I forgot who did his book, but anyway, they'll come back to me. But yeah, so they did that, and so we ended up just kind of moving forward with everything, and it's been great since then. And so now we're kind of like, well, where do we go next? And then we had our first novel crossover with Infinity 7, which ended up being our Fantasy Art Studios. Fantasy Art Studios did Bark. Let me just make sure I put that out there. Clement Romaine. And we ended up doing a crossover novel, which was Infinity 7. That was our Avengers Assemble. And that was me, Kyle, and Keyshawn bringing our 3 guys together, because we had this long story arc that we had been building over time. Everybody was kind of introduced to different sub-characters, and the main antagonist was Stratus.
Ooh.
And so we brought him in, where they kind of started really facing off with him in Infinity 7. And then that branched off into Infinity. The first one was Gods Among Men. And the second book of Infinity 7 series was War of Gods. And that's where they finally met Stratus. So we had all these sub-characters they kind of fought in the first book. And the second book, they finally met. And it just came out so beautiful. The big fight scene at the end, I really felt like I had scripted it right. And then we all just wrote into it, and it was fantastic. So now we're kind of moved on. What we did with our CMPDSU is where Marvel has the phases. Mm-hmm. We did stages. So Infinity 7 2 kind of ended stage 4. And then now I just finished the second issue of The Cape. Very excited about that. So that will actually jump off stage 5. And Keyshawn just finished book 5 of Menzuo, and that's going to continue. So if you go to our website, you go down to CMPDSU, you'll see all the books just lined up, and people could just click on them and go read the synopsis and pick them up.
Dude, that's so exciting. I can't
Yeah,
believe, like, I mean, just to start at the very beginning of that you found a community of like other novelists
right,
that you
right,
guys came together. I
right.
mean, just starting, out of, the mindset, like what drove you to be a novelist before trying to like create comics? Like what did you feel like was the advantage or the mindset behind that?
Right. I think the advantage was that I feel like you have to be a storyteller, right? And
Hmm.
when you write novels over and over again, you write something one way, people critique it, they say stuff, most criticism is trash, but a lot of it you can take and
Hmm.
say, okay, I'll do this next time, I'll do that. And you add to your stories, then you read other storytellers and you start to understand how they tell stories. So I'm always fascinated with how people tell stories now, so I look at shows, I look at movies, and I'm like, oh, they use that technique. I see what they did to what drew me in, what got me connected to the characters. Why is this story different than that one? Why did The Mandalorian really work when Obi-Wan didn't, And so I kind of I see those little tidbits and those little tricks that people put into things to really kind of lock you in on those characters. And I tell people all the time, I say, a real good trick to use in storytelling is taking this character who is your protagonist, who's very successful, savvy, whatever they are, or they're that person who's kind of fumbling through life, however which way you go. But if you make them this person who seems invincible, that's kind of out of touch with us. We don't really understand that. We understand as human beings in our own personal walks, we're vulnerable. We have our insufficiencies and idiosyncrasies, things that make us imperfect. How do I
Hmm.
connect to this character who's like Superman? How do I connect to Superman when he's perfect? And what they did in The Mandalorian is that there's a thing called anchoring someone to humanity. Now, I kind
Hmm.
of made it up, but I thought conceptually that's what it was, is that you take something to anchor that person to be more human, even though they're not.
Hmm.
And so if you look at it, it's like Superman with his mom, still on the
Hmm.
farm. That anchors him to humanity. We understand that taking care of your mom or whatever that relationship is. We
Hmm.
understand that with Peter Parker and Aunt May. We
Hmm.
understand it with The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda. We understand
Yeah.
what it is to take care of something, someone who becomes a little bit more valuable or more important to you than just the journey, of the
Yep.
character. Because we start the characters on the journey in Act 1. They decide to take the journey. They stumble into Act 2 once they made that decision. But what's that B story, that love story that continues to keep
Mm.
them grounded? And that's those techniques that people have used. So for me, with like my Broken series, it's Kisa trying to survive in this dystopian world following this new all-out nuclear war. But she has to continue to be a surrogate mother to her little brother. So that's how we keep her anchored. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. I love that. I love how like much thought you've put into that. Not a lot of creators, I guess, especially you're coming out of that novelist background where
right,
you really have to have something enriched and you have to really understand it through and through. And it shocks me that a lot of like writers don't read like novels and they'll just read comics and whatnot. But I
right,
feel like you need to have a wide breadth of like literary, like, substance and knowledge and whatnot, because you have to know how to like, when you read novels, you're hearing like every thought, every movement, like you're going through the motions with these characters, or at least observing the motions with these characters in such a depth that you don't really get in a comic. So I
right,
feel like you're understanding your world and everything that happens into it so much more almost than
right,
most comic creators even understand their world. Um,
right.
and so when you switch over to comics, does this make it just so much easier to visualize and see and start moving and mapping things out for a storyline?
It's 10 times harder.
Oh, interesting.
because
Okay.
because my novels, like I haven't written a novel in less than 90,000 words. You know what I mean? So you got time to play. You
Yeah.
can play. It's a little bit daunting because you go my Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. Okay, I got them. Usually I go beginning and end. It's very easy.
Mhm.
The middle is all the juicy stuff that it has to have purpose. So it's like these, I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to fail, fall down. I'm going to now because of that, I'm going to try to do this again. I'm going to fail, fall down. That just happens in Act 2. This up and down roller coaster,
Mhm.
and that's what keeps the audience engaged. The readers. And I tell them it's like these shortfalls. You got a little bit, you made a little bit of progress, but now you got a shortfall. You got a little bit, so you kind of almost get in there till you get to the pinnacle, right when you get her to cross into Act 3. But for me, you take that and you're trying to cram that into 24 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And so I break down like, okay, Act 1's going to be page 1 to 5. Just percentage wise of what it normally is in a
Yeah.
novel. I try to make that into a comic. And then I got all this. And like, if I'm doing 24 pages, like I'm wrapping up pages 21 to 24 is my Act 3. So
Yeah.
Act 2 is really big. And I've got to have enough set pieces in Act 2 that really kind of are the payoff. Like, why are you reading this comic? Of course, everybody wants all the action. You don't want to sit here and read a drama the entire time. Or maybe you do, but the majority of people want action. They want to see the Hawk bash some stuff. So I've got to give you these great action sequences in Act 2. And so you're sitting there kind of racking your brain like, how many panels, on this page? And then how much am I trying to drive the reader to flip the page to see something new? And when they flip it, am I giving them a full page or am I getting some more panels? And how am I moving them across that page with all these panels and the design of the panels? Are they big? Are they small? All the percentages. So I tell people what's really great as a writer is that, especially because I've written screenplays, is that now you become the director.
Yeah.
So you're telling people, okay, look, it's this point of view on this panel. It's these characters in here. They're looking here. They're looking there. Like I'm directing them the entire way. And my artists have just done a fantastic job. We work with like 5 teams of artists, and they usually, I've been blessed that when I write them, they usually do better than what I even anticipated, like the way that they visually see it. So I know I was successful in trying to tell them what to draw, and they draw even better than what I had come across. So it's so rewarding. You get I got the pages, I'm sending them to you, and you look at the inked pages, you're like, oh my God, that was great. Then you send it to the colorist, and we have a fantastic colorist, Julio Rojas. You can find him, Player Knots. He's on Instagram. Fantastic. And he just does a great job of just adding the colors the way that I wanted it with the shading and all that. So when you get good teams and you don't have to kind of handhold them through everything, it's amazing. It really is an amazing experience.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Once you have reliable players, and you're a coach, you kind of know about this. Like once
Mm-hmm.
your team is set and you can depend on them,
Right.
and you're just kind of going through the motions at a certain point, it's just exciting. You're just thrilled to see like, okay, what's the result? Like I know we're gonna kill it. I know that we have, we've done our best in like setting everything up. Like the
Mm-hmm.
execution, I'm sure is the most exciting part at that
Right.
moment. And it sounds like you have a very thorough way to plan out your stories as well. What's your planning process like, even from novels and comics or screenplays, like, and how do some of them differ from each other?
Right. I think for me, it's like you sit there and I go, okay, what do I need to accomplish? Like I brought out the Fabulous Five. That's my new team in the Cape series. So the Cape is like an umbrella, it's the Capes,
Mhm.
Chicago, year 2035. Crime is 10 times as worse as, I'll give you my elevator speech on it. Crime is 10 times the worse as it is. And I tell people who come to the tables at the convention, I'm like, crime is worse than it is. And all of a sudden the storm comes to the city, and whoever gets caught up in the storm, the next day they wake up with superpowers. So now we have a moral dilemma, ethical dilemma, because some people are using them for good, some for bad. Eventually you got these 2 groups that form. Dark Phase as the bad guys, the Capes are the good guys, and the city adopts them and says, protect us. And they put them up in high rises. They give them endorsement deals. So it's almost like a reality TV kind of crazy story as well. And the one rule they can't do is they can't harm a human. In our world of the CMP-DSU, we have normals, which are basically people like me and you, and then super normals, who are our heroes. So we call them normals and super normals. And you can't harm a normal. Well, the one day the most powerful supernormal comes on TV and actually admits to not only harming a human, but killing them. So the first book becomes this murder mystery as to why would he do that? Because the authorities want to bring him to justice. Darkface wants to recruit him now, because now we can really turn the tide in this whole thing. And the heroes want to kill him because, like, you're messing up our gig. So it becomes this entire crazy story. So I think as I'm planning, and the Capes have been through a lot. They've been through book 1. They've been through book 2, Overdrive. They've been through Infinity 7. They've been through the comic Cape Hellfire. And then they've been through book 5 of Infinity 7. So there's 5 Cape stories, and I was like, time to hand this off to a younger group, kind of like Young Justice, So that's why, in scripting out Fabulous 5, what am I doing with this? How are we handing this, passing the baton, sort of say, to a new team? And so when I script that out, I'm like, I'm in the beginning. I'm forming a team. Why? And
Yeah.
that was the whole introduction to the Fabulous Five comic. And so now with doing that, it's just a matter of okay, Act One introductions. What's the mission? Act Two training. Got to get them up to speed, and then by the end, where are we going? So the main character is Icon. If people go to Star Child and go through some of their posts, they'll see some of the stuff with Icon. He's the main character. Funny enough, he was introduced in Infinity Book One as a bad guy who got
Oh,
killed. He was a little young guy just kind of running up on the capes, and they were like, "Boom, you're done," you know. And but his power is that he comes back to life. He regenerates. And so when he comes back, he always gets a new power added to him.
oh, that's
And he
sick.
never knows what it is. But the more he dies, his time of being gone is shortening. So eventually he will either won't die ever or he won't come back. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
dang. Yeah.
But he keeps getting more powerful. So I kind of wrap that into him learning this in with him coming back to life.
Hmm.
He does come back to life in Infinity 2. And then now in the comic book, we could just kind of roll with it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So we reintroduce him in Infinity 2 and where his whole storyline kind of branches there. And I said, oh, this is a great opportunity to book next issue of the Cape. We'll have Paladin, who's the main leader of the Cape, kind of handing this off to him and kind of bringing them up. So it was a great comic. Came out to be like 28 pages.
Cool.
And it was a real opportunity to kind of introduce some of these other characters. Like Bark makes a guest appearance in there as well because they're using his facility with his training room and stuff. So we just continue to get these crossover opportunities. And so for me, with Icon and the Fabulous Five, all these young guys, it was great to kind of see their dynamic work back and forth.
We know that running a crowdfunding campaign is tough, and that's why Comix Wellspring wants to help you out. We offer an exclusive crowdfunding partnership program when you print with us and mention us in your campaigns. When you use our program, you'll get a discount on printing and a social media shout out to help promote your project. For full details, check out the link in the description. Now, back to our conversation with Braxton. That's awesome. So you're essentially like, as you're entering a new arc and a new story, you're basically like, okay, let's look at the history here. Let's see
Mm-hmm.
where like the future is for these characters. Let's see what they've also endured and gone through. So we're not
Right.
like, repeating stuff, but we're also pulling from tidbits of history, like threads, this character coming back to
Absolutely.
life. Like that's a great thread to pull. And it's a great thing for fans to like, for new fans to want to go back into older material and kind of learn a bit
Absolutely.
more. And it's for older fans to be like, oh wow, look at how they're changing this character up. And I think that's
Yeah.
what makes some of the bigger, DC and Marvel characters so interesting is like when you forget about a character for a while and it's reinvented. And that
Yeah.
reinvention is typically what really captivates like a newer
Right.
generation for that.
Right.
That's a great approach for it too, because you're building upon yourself and you're not restricting yourself either.
Mm-hmm.
You're just kind of looking at a timeline of things in like a
Right.
natural order, but also you're not making, I guess, the writing essence of it feel impossible. It's like, okay,
Right.
what is going to happen next? What's like the most logical thing, and how do we add these twists into it and make it an
Right.
interesting story? Um, yeah, I feel like that's just if you're going for an ongoing huge universe, that's the one way to go, and that's how the Marvel universe has been built. So it sounds like
Absolutely.
you're on that track of building all that. Where are you in terms of like the filmmaking aspect? I know you're doing a lot of screenwriting and whatnot. Does that tie into all of these as well?
Well, so film. When I first got into writing film, I feel like it was like maybe 2015, 16. It was a lot more open.
Hmm.
Um, Meaning you have more opportunities to kind of pitch and get
Yeah.
things in, and because people were writing stuff, making stuff, and it was automatically millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Now I
Hmm.
don't know if I like what streaming has done, but I don't know if streaming has if it's that the stories have gotten worse as far as the writing, or if streaming has just made it so close ended where people don't want to go to the movie theaters anymore and waste their time and money and all these other investments that it really takes to go to see a movie. People have kids, they got to get a babysitter if it's an R-rated movie, and that's like the movie is 2 hours, but getting there is an hour. Getting there maybe an hour of planning. Then you got to get the kids dropped off. So there's just a lot that goes into it. And then you get there and the ticket's $20.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then most likely you got to eat somewhere. So this date night becomes a little crazy.
It's not
So
like it
people
was,
they're gonna
30 years ago where you could, $20 could cover a whole night, like
exactly. So if you're gonna invest all this time, people really want it to be worth it. So I don't know if along the way, studios were just like, no, no more new ideas because they're not working. People are just too afraid to invest in them or even
Hmm.
do it right. So these IPs have just turned into only novels and stuff. And unless you sell millions of copies, nobody really cares about how great the story is. They want to know the success, or at least they have a built-in audience.
Hmm.
So I say all that to say, when I wrote initially, it was a lot easier to kind of get connected, and then have somebody actually read your script. Now I feel like it's just such a buddy system, and who you know and what you know, and you see some stuff that comes out that's terrible. I see the same directors doing films all along; they're awful. So a lot of the stuff, the product that was out there doesn't represent what it should, and it just becomes a mess. But it's just a money grab. So I am not as attracted to taking my stories into film and TV as I used to be, because that's what we built Cosby Media Productions on. We tell people all the time, we've never put out a call for stories. People just find out about us through word of mouth or through other people, and they say, hey, and then we read them. Do I see your story having legs to be told in another medium? Can it
Hmm.
be either comics, TV, or film? And if I don't see that, I'm not interested. And so I'm proud to say that the majority of pretty much everything we brought in, we feel like it has a way to go somewhere. But as far as us actively pushing, like I really, really used to, I got all wrapped up into, I've had contracts signed, I've had people pull out, I've done a part of all of that. I just want to tell my good stories, at
Yeah.
this point. And if something happens and God blesses me and somebody comes along, hey, or if a great opportunity is there. But other than that, I'm not really chasing it as much as I used to. Although I could see all my stuff really becoming something else.
I love that. I mean, it makes sense too. I really wanted to get into film as well, and that was around it was more college stuff. So somewhere between 2015 and 2019 is when I was really
Hmm.
chasing like a film idea.
Yeah.
Um, but you're right. It kind of got more. You realize how much more difficult it feels after a while, like getting a whole team together, lining everybody up on one day to shoot, and just like how do we
Right.
like feed everybody? How do we even get like even the production aspect of it? You
Right.
really need to know people who have done it before, or like you
Right.
said, you have to have friends that are in this industry to kind of
Hmm.
work your way through.
Yeah.
Or unless you went in early and just grinded in like your early 20s and just said, I'm
Right.
going to do this, because I don't have that type of energy anymore, like
Right.
at all.
Right. Absolutely.
Um, but I mean, also like film is awesome. I love film, and I'm a big TV film person. I mean, it's something just like comics I adore, and I wish I could see some of my creations go up in that direction,
Hmm.
or even animated in that sense. But what it takes and the cost and like the environment, sometimes, just being in our little corner creating is just so much more peaceful.
Yeah.
And it just you kind of get more out of it, other than like someone maybe really warping your story into something that's almost unrecognizable, I feel.
Absolutely. And that's why
Um,
you know, I know there's levels, right? There's the big leagues, and then to me, there's small press. So I kind of figure I look at us more as small press because, again, we don't feel as if we're the same as the basic indies. I've seen stuff. I've seen people print comics with the panels are off the page. That is not us. You know what I
right,
mean?
yeah,
So we're a
exactly.
small press. So basically, when you get one of our books or our comics, you're going to look at it and go, this isn't different from anybody else. You know what I mean? If we
Hmm.
didn't have our name on there, did you know if it was printed by Penguin or anybody else? No. But that's the
Right.
quality and the effort we put into every book, every comic. And so we want everybody to kind of see ourselves and go, man, this is really nice. This is like the big leagues, because I don't want to be, I know that it's tiered, and I know the effort that I'm putting into it is not as the same effort as some of the indie stuff that I see out there. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
yes, I know people are going to say, well, it's independent because we're working that way, but we're a small press independent company,
Yeah.
and we pride ourselves on that because we feel like we give people very good quality. If you're gonna spend your money, we want you to have something you take home. You go, man, this was actually pretty nice.
I mean, and that's probably the best approach, especially when you're doing a collaborative thing like what you are, because you're not just like
Hmm.
supporting yourself.
Right.
You're supporting this universe, and this universe has, it sounds like you have 10 to 15 creators kind of joining on with you,
Hmm.
including, like colorists and inkers and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
absolutely.
And so you're not just, and that's how I feel with the anthologies I put out. Like, I'm not just representing myself. There's
Hmm.
20 something creators in this book. This book is going to represent each and every one of them. I want to
Right.
have a product that every one of these creators can take to a convention to give to someone and be like, hey, I'm part of this. Check it out. And they could be happy and satisfied and proud to represent this, creation. And that takes a lot of, self like effort and resilience, and like when you're doing that, you're just uplifting a whole community at once, and that takes a lot of effort because you're just like, if it's your own book, your own little creation, you're kind of like, oh, okay,
Right.
it's me. You could hate on whatever I have to say, or
Right.
find my faults, but when you're doing a collaborative thing, it's so much bigger than that. So your quality has to be for that type of caliber.
Absolutely.
And do you feel like it's paid off the last couple years doing this? Do you feel like the growth in your audience has been there? How has
I
that
think
been that react?
what has happened honestly is that Cosby Productions with the books was going a certain direction. And then what I tell people now, adding to, so now I can sell book sets. I've
Hmm.
got Steel Rain, the Bounty Hunter series, but I did his comic book, which became his prequel.
Ooh.
So you read the comic first; those events lead right up to him jumping right into his story in the novel. And that novel had it's my international bestseller. It's recognized as a finalist for the American Legacy Book Award. So I know it had the stuff, but I know people would see the cover and go, "Man, it looks really cool." So I kind of give them a little something extra with the comic, and now they can kind of see all that sci-fi, bloom lighting, artistry. Daniel Max worked on that. He did a fantastic job with me on that comic. So it gives us sets. So where another publisher, a comic publisher may come to a convention and have to sell, 10 copies of a comic to try to make $100. I can sell 2 sets and
Yeah.
I'm already at 100, So for us, for profitability, it really helped. Plus, I just really wanted us to be considered a hybrid publisher. I want people to come to the table and realize we had a little bit of everything. So, same thing with Broken. We got book 1 is the novel, book 2 is the comic, book 3 is the graphic novel, which is on Kickstarter now. And so it just gives people an opportunity to really kind of get a blend of everything.
Does that give you also an advantage at conventions, having that like diversity in what you're tabling with, from novels to comics? Do you feel like you're making better sales integrating
Absolutely.
the two?
Absolutely, it did. Like I said, it did a huge thing for us. And then what we did is we kind of took that. People come to the table at the CMPDSU, they'll see my stuff because obviously I don't bring every creator with me. And they'll
Hmm.
go, what else is a part of this? Because they'll see the banner behind us, all the heroes and villains. And I go, man, it's just a little bit of what we have. I said, Bark's got 3, his comic books here, but he's got 3 novels. And what we did is the back of each comic, we'll put in like a little page that kind of shows you, like, let me see. So like on Broken, if you buy the
Oh,
comic, you
nice.
can scan that QR code and it'll take you where you can go pick up the novel. So that's part of the series. So we give people an opportunity to go grab the whole thing. But if you didn't, and you don't want to read 3 Bark novels, 4 Menzuo, 4 Metatron, 4K, 2 Majesties, we made the graphic novel Compendium,
Oh, cool.
which is basically what we did. We put all 4 of those, we put all 5 of the comics in there. You get those
Hmm.
for thrown in there. But we take you through the entire story chronologically from Menzuo, who was the first one. And we basically broke down each one of the books that we have in the compendium. We give you a page summary of the novel, a picture of the novel so you know which one it is. And then we give you a comic page that has like 6 or 7 panels that actually show you all the big moments from the novel. So we
Oh,
basically,
wow.
like I said, we serialized the novels into comic books.
Dude, that's
And
awesome.
so we give you 4 of those, then you get the Menzuo comic, then you go to the next person in the series, which is Bark. Then you get his 3 serialized, then you get his comic, then you go to the next one. And we take this all the way through. So you've got over 175 pages of comic book art and storytelling of our entire CMP DSU, which it drops you all the way up to the end of Infinity Part 1. And now the novel is the next thing you have to grab. So a lot of people just come, they'll get the compendium and they'll get the novel for Infinity 7-2, and they're caught up. And now they're waiting
Dude,
for everything that's coming out next. So
that's such a good way to market it. Like, it sounds like you guys do you guys have meetings to talk about the way you're going to publish and like
yeah,
market
in
and
my
put everything
head,
together? Oh yeah, I
I'm
feel you there.
sitting
Yeah.
having a meeting with myself. but I do talk to the artists, to the authors, because they had to. I said, look, I need you to write me a summary of this book. What's this? Give me your 3 summaries. And then I really tell people I am like the Kevin Feige of the universe. So I go back and I start to bring all the other elements of the storytelling into it, make sure it makes sense, make sure that summary really hits all the key points. And then I wrote out all the comic scripts for those novels off their summaries. I wrote up, okay, panels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is what needs to be in here. I work with the artists. We put it together. We work with the colors. So all those became me kind of putting my take on what I felt professionally needed to be the finished product, And so that was a big labor of love, but that has paid off. Like you said, did it pay off? Yes, it did. People buy that compendium, and now I know they're caught up. They get on our reading list. We can blast them when the next novel's coming out from Manzullo. We can blast them when the next comic, when the Fabulous Five comes out, and they can just go and pick it up now. You can either meet us at the conventions when we go back, or they can buy it offline.
That's so cool. I can't believe like how well that's come together for you.
Yeah.
Like it seems so flawless. I know there's so much more to it. But so where do you, and this is every creator, it's a big mystery, but like how do you find the time to like craft these universes and put everything together to handle the business aspects, the marketing, the creations, the
Yes.
organizing, on top of, you're a coach, you're a family man. Like how do you
Yeah.
balance your life around everything with this?
I think when I go to sleep, another person takes over.
Yeah, honestly, yeah,
I
has
really
to.
believe I've been cloned because when I look back at it, man, I mean, honestly, like if you were in my office and you saw all the books lined up here, and all the toys and the comics and this other thing, it's really crazy, And so I just find I'm really good at setting goals and say, okay, today I need to knock this out. Yesterday I worked on. We have 2 books come out on Halloween from Drew Samuelson and Chris McCauley. A beautiful little Halloween themed book with little Halloween stories for the theme, and then also the sequel to Restart from Drew. And I was just putting together all this stuff to get it ready for formatting and with the paperbacks and put all that stuff. I hung that stuff up online. Okay, good, got that done. So I just do a good job at just pacing myself, saying, okay, tonight we're working on this option. I'm working on that. And so when I finally got through with the Fabulous Five, I was really, really happy because I knew that was the last project personally that I was working on until at least the beginning of next year. I had those 3 projects I had to get done. I was writing a children's book with my daughter. We got that done. I was doing 3 projects at the same time: children's book, graphic novel for Broken, and I was doing the Fabulous Five. So I was kind of like, new stuff, art was coming in every day. Like, let me look at it. No, let's change this. Or this one. Okay, no, that's actually good. Okay, the inks are approved, go to colors, So it was that kind of a thing back and forth. So it has been crazy. And then still trying to find the balance with life. My wife does a great job at giving me these hours, these pockets of time where I'm going to dive into my dungeon, get all this done, and then come back out of it after a while.
So you have a really good support system behind you.
Yes.
And that's awesome to hear. I love hearing that, just knowing that your family is supportive. I mean, they have to be with how big and how successful this has been. I mean, you know that there's so much more in the background, and typically it's from a very supportive, family life. It sounds like, all of that is a big contribution on not only like motivation, inspiration, but just abilities to get all of this done. Because again, tabling is that conventions, that takes a lot of time and effort and money too. So
exhausting too.
Yeah,
because you sit there all day.
Dude, yeah.
And you have to kind of drop your pride too. You like people walk by, hey, can I interest you on it? No, okay, no, thank you.
Or just like that look they give you, and you're just like, okay, I didn't want to offend you.
I didn't drive all that way. I didn't pay for this hotel room. I didn't pay for this table for me to just go sit there and go,
right,
and wait for somebody to ask me about my book. There's no way,
Yeah, I mean, you want to give it your all. Like at that point, you're like, I'm literally invested in this. Like I'm going to find success, and people, especially non-comic book creators, don't really realize like you really get over rejection when you start tabling. You really you have to get over that feat, and that that you'll get like 1 out of every 10 person to come talk to you and hear you out, hear your pitch, and like hook onto that and find accomplishment on even getting their attention. Sometimes it's not even a sale, but just planting those seeds and getting info out there. And following up when people follow you, you know what I mean? That's another cool thing too. Like, how do you work your back end system, like with mailing lists? And I'm sure you have that kind of set up at this point for all of your sales. Like, do you like newsletters? Is there other ways you keep attention outside of cons to your material?
Yeah, we do. We get people to sign up for the newsletter when they're there, and then we put them in. I use MailChimp. And I just found that to be the most convenient, honestly, because I've been using that template forever. So I use that, and it will send out blasts. Once a week, something comes up. Big. Hey, we're going to be at this convention. We're going to be here and there, or we got the new book coming out here. Oh, look at these new panels we're working on, and you get people who unsubscribe. But a lot of times, we work that list enough that we at least have the average number of people that's going to open up the email and look and be interested. And sometimes we see some trickle in sales from that, so we can't complain.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, finding every avenue to market your stuff.
Hmm.
Social media is exhausting. We all know
Yeah,
that.
it
And it's
is.
hard to keep up with messages, any sort of whatever that they have going on
Right,
for whatever platform. But like a newsletter, I feel like it's not utilized enough by enough creators.
right,
And the value you get from it, from like honing in personality, honing in updates, like letting them know, like, even if you do sales on your website, or just promotional things. I feel like that's the prime way that indie creators need to start growing towards.
right.
Anything from like a Substack to setting up Mailchimp to doing, having your store set up. What's your platform that your store is set up on too? I know a lot of creators use like Big Cartel, but what do you find works best for you?
I use one that is, I think it's like WP Works or something like that. It's built into, and it's integrated from WordPress.org.
Cool,
So I
nice.
just I just picked the one that I thought was nice. I kind of went through a whole bunch of them, and I was like, okay, this one actually works. It gives me everything I need. At the end
Hmm.
of the day, it's all user friendly, and it helps me. It's not very expensive on a month basis, but if somebody came and wanted to buy something, it's very simple. Click, 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 boom. I get it. It takes everything. I get the messages when they're there, and when I send and package it away, I could just say mailed, so they'll get the update on their end. So it's simple,
Nice.
you know.
And that's kind of what you want at this point too. Like
Yeah,
finding simple systems to keep your mind open for, like how much does the finance and the business side bog down your creative side? Like how do you navigate those waters yourself?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's always about return on investment, right? I don't mind paying for something if I think it's going to work, but there is no system out there, and I would tell all you creators, there is no system that will guarantee you a sale. I think you can agree with that, right?
Yeah.
I can do this. No, that you may get some eyes on you, but that is not going to mean that everybody is going to go and buy it. It just doesn't happen.
Hmm.
And like you said, it's like how many people can you bring to the table that day because you're just trying to do percentages. Like, hey, how many can I convert? This is a sales conversion. If I got a conversation with you and I told you about my story, how many of these people, if I could bring 50 to the table, can I sell 20 of them? You know what I mean? That's a pretty good
Yeah.
day, you
Yeah.
know? And so it's about just getting as many eyes as you can. So it's the same way with your product. How many visits can I get to the website to that particular um, story or a comic that I'm trying to sell? If I can get eyes on it, maybe I can sell it.
Do the sales and stuff like that help like inspire you and motivate you as they climb up? Or is this just something no matter what, even if you weren't making heavy sales, you'd be pursuing and pushing towards?
I think I would be. I've really, like I said, I've fallen in love with storytelling. I look at stories for a certain. Is that your cat?
Yeah, my cat. Yeah, just
I have one too.
yeah.
I locked the door because I knew he would be doing the same
This
nonsense.
guy is just climbing all over me right now. Just
Yeah.
ridiculous. Yeah.
I just love storytelling, so I'm always looking for the next intriguing story that I think is intriguing because you write for yourself. I tell people all the time, you have to like the next story you write. And for me, like I say, book 20, it's like I want to make my next favorite story. So when I
Hmm.
get to my next story, if it's not better than my last one, I'm going to go back to the drawing board and keep working on it. So I've been blessed to say that I actually done it. Every time I write a new one, I go like, man, that was really good. That was really good. And I
Yeah.
and I enter them into some review boards and some contests and get some feedback. And I like just to hear when people, the best is obviously the fans when they'll come to the table like, oh man, I bought Steel Rain last year and I loved, the book and the comics. So, well, I don't have another Steel Rain, but I got this one here. Oh, just give it to me because I know it's going to be good. Like that is what I love. And
Trust in the
so
creator. Once you've established that, that's
yeah,
fulfilling. Yeah.
yeah, that's great. And again, I'm not on this huge level of selling, $1 million a month like some of the other big artist authors out there, but I do have some people who actually like what I do, and I just keep doing it. And for me as a therapist, I'm like, if I'm still writing at 70 and 80, I know I'm using my brain. So I'm
Hmm.
trying to fight off some dementia. So if these stories just keep coming out of me until then, let it be.
Yeah. Dude, that's exciting because it's, getting a story and completing a story is difficult enough, like as a creator. I
Right,
think that's the number one thing that the majority of like 90% of creators have not completed writing their story yet. There's
right,
so many, up to issues X amount. I'm guilty of that as well. Like
mhm,
Teenage Babylon and Fake Your Death. I have the first chunk of it written, but I haven't closed the
right,
story off
right.
yet. But you've accomplished that so many times, and you continue to accomplish that. Is that like a worry of yours anymore? Do you ever feel like you're starting a project, you don't know how to finish it, or is your mapping out so concrete and you know the system so well that just finishing a story is like second nature? It's just like starting one at that point.
I think what happens to me is I have a lot of ideas for the trajectory of the story, and then I write, and then I end up adding so much to the writing that the story just stops me. So I haven't finished what I set out. So I'm like, okay, I'll just use that for the next book. Like even with the graphic novel for Broken, I had a whole bunch of other things. I wanted to do this fantastic set piece at this abandoned freighter underwater because I had not seen anything underwater yet, at least that I've put out. And I was like, that'd be really cool. I can imagine. I couldn't get there. It's a 56-page graphic novel, but I couldn't get there because these other things happened.
Mhm.
And like I tell people all the time in writing, the great thing is when the story kind of writes itself and the characters start to tell you something about them that you didn't even see.
Mhm.
And then so you start to add, go, oh man, this is a great little thing about Kisa and her character that I need to stay on a little bit longer. I need to ride this out because I think people are going to like this. So I write that. So, I mean, I've got like, if you look at my computer, I've got like maybe 5 more stories already, and I haven't gone down that road. So I'm already like, I want to write this other story that I just found out some information, but it's historical fiction, which I've never written before. So I'm really
Ooh.
excited about jumping into that. But I'm like, I got to keep pushing this up.
Yeah.
I don't have time, and I don't have the money to be paying for all these artists. I have some great artists, and they really work with pricing. But man, I mean, I would need like thousands of dollars to I can knock them out, but I
Mhm.
would need thousands upon thousands of dollars to keep these stories going out. So I have to pace myself. And
How
so
do you know
that's
the
not my
difference
problem.
between like a good idea that's worth pursuing and exploring as it falls off of like when it strays off the trail of your outline? How do you know when it's like a good idea to pursue or if it's like, no, this is straying too far? I got to reel it back into like what the story's centralized on.
Yeah, I think a lot of times there's a balance. You just have a natural from writing so much. You have to, like I said, I stay with Act One, Act Two, Act Three structure.
Hmm.
When I start going outside the lines too much of what that is, and I worked with a lady called a professional pen who we did like an intensive over a couple of months with hammering out this one script that I did, and it was always like, what does that bring into the story?
Hmm.
What is that doing to the story? Because if it's not doing anything, like I think there's a Pixar formula where it's like you do this, this happens, therefore, but
Yep. Yeah.
you know,
I
and
know
so
exactly which formula you're
this
talking
happens
about.
to the
Yeah.
character, so therefore this character does X, Y, or Z, and they think they won, but now they've got this other this happens, therefore, and so if my story isn't, if it's just kind of rambling and it's not addressing that and getting me
Hmm.
back to the centralized focus, it just can't stay in there. I've got to get rid of it.
That's a I listened to a show called You Are a Storyteller. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. I
Mm-mm.
highly recommend it. I think you would just absolutely love and adore it. I re-listen to the entire show typically before I start a new project
Are they
because
on YouTube?
yeah, it's on YouTube,
Okay, cool.
on podcast stuff. Brian McDonald and Jesse Bryan host it, and it's just
Hmm.
such a in-depth craft show. It's literally about craft, and they really talk about filmmaking more.
Yeah.
But it resonates with comics and it resonates with novels, and
Hmm.
like everything you're about is what this show is about. And they talk about like an armature, which is basically like your north star of your story, like what the key
Yep.
concept is, not so much a theme, but just like what keeps your mold.
Absolutely.
And so whenever you drift too far away from it, you look back at your armature and you're like, how is this serving my
Yeah.
north star? Like, how is this character? If you get stuck on a passage or if you stray, you're like, is this serving this? Like, if not,
Right.
I need to redirect the scene to that. And that sounds like essentially the concept you have going.
It is.
It's always fun hearing like the different iterations of almost the same
Yeah.
thing we all
It's all the
practice
same.
by.
Storytelling hasn't changed, right? I mean,
Right.
they said the greatest story ever told was the Odyssey, and that's where they got 3 act structure from. So they just kind of follow this same thing. The centralized theme or the armature or the spine of your story.
Hmm.
Somebody put it
Yeah.
that way. They're like, this is your spine
I
of your
heard that.
story. What is this that's driving the character to go on this mission? Once you can't get back to that with any little thing you're doing, you need to toss it because
Yep.
it's not going to have value. And again, comics are the worst because you only have so many pages.
Yeah.
You only have
Correct.
so many panels. You know what I mean? So everything you do is intentional. Like I've always known with writing a script, like every scene, there's no throwaway scenes. You better make
Mhm.
sure that scene has what is the purpose of this scene here?
Yeah.
This scene has to mean something towards the story. If not, it's got to be tossed. Same thing
Even
with
if
a
it's your
comic book.
favorite scene, like,
This panel better mean something, and I
yep.
challenge my writers when they're like, they'll just they'll use a whole page on one panel. And I'm like, you had a lot more to tell in here, didn't you? Well, no, I think it's just beautiful to have this great image. I'm like, okay, this next stuff better build on that. You know what I mean? Because I don't mind giving people good artwork. But
Yeah.
even with that, you can have these small little floating panels that still push something. And so I kind of challenge them a little bit. Some of them listen, some of them don't. But I'm just a stickler for story. I really want you to put out a great story. And I want to put out a great story that I can sit back and when I go back and read it, I'm like, man, that was really good. Where did I get that from? you
It's
know?
it's very easy in comics to get infatuated with the art and the stunningness that the art can do to you, even as a writer. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you just want to have this magnificent splash page, and then you're like, oh, but I'm gonna cram the rest of the story in this one panel, and it's just
Right.
gonna be like and it doesn't work, like it doesn't.
Mm-mm.
You have to like give yourself room to breathe. You have to let the artist breathe as well, and you have to let your story breathe and tell what it needs to tell. And I love that you're so like infatuated with that. Like you're grounded, but you know how to like re-navigate if you need to. And that's
Yeah.
something you need as a creator is like stick to your rules because your rules are there. Just like if you're building a house, like you're gonna stick to your blueprint. Like you
Right.
really can't stray far from your
Absolutely.
blueprint before you mess up.
Right.
And when you're creating, it's the same concept. It trips me out how like sometimes this is the one profession people forget, like, oh no, we do have rules. You do need to follow things to make
Absolutely.
quality, and it's something that's skipped over. Not everyone learning story is like learning how to draw, you know. It's there's concepts there, there's
Right.
important elements you need to follow. And when you're structuring a single page story and you do a graphic, are you structuring it the same way, or are you breaking up your graphic novel into like chapters and doing 3 act structure within those chapters? Like what's the difference between your single issue versus a trade? Is a trade a little bit easier because you could breathe kind of like a movie
You
script?
can, yeah. When you do paperbacks, you can definitely take a moment,
Mhm.
because my thing is always I they have a thing when you're writing screenplays, and if you're doing it right and you're following the structure, the reason 3 act structure exists is because it works. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
This isn't something that's just random. The real good stories will have 3 act structure. When you go back and you look at those beats, the midpoint of the story and it's all come to Jesus moment and it's all over kind of thing. All those things, those important beats, that's how people expect stories to be told to them.
Yeah.
And so they're feeling that. They're waiting for that. They're waiting for that twist at the end. They're waiting for that B story to be valuable. They're waiting for the B story and A story to come collide together and then really move you into Act 3 where you're really ready for the finish now. Whatever that character was in the beginning, and if Luke fought Vader in the beginning, he got his arm cut off. There was no way he was going to beat him. He had to go through the entire trilogy to prepare to be able to defeat Vader at the end. That's the whole story. That's
Yeah.
That's the 3 act story. This character, if you want me to go on this journey with this character, you can't be as powerful to win in the beginning because it wasn't the point of me following you till the end. You know.
Mhm.
So I have to have those beats in there. I have to have those moments where I'm kind of believing, I'm rooting for this character. No matter what they do, they seem like they're failing, and they just keep winning somehow, just slightly. And then it's like a fake win at the midpoint, and they're a fake loss. And these things exist for a reason because they're proven. So for me, it's easier to write the story because I feel like at least if I follow that structure, I think I put all the elements in there. Now, whether somebody doesn't like it or not is another story. They can look at my artwork that we have with our teams and think it's trash. I feel like I'm a stickler on art. I'm an artist first. I just happen to write, and I can't draw as good as these guys. you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
so I pass it on to more talented people. But then they value me because they're like, "Oh, your story is so good," because they know they can't write that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's we play in tandem. But yes, for a story, like I get through a chapter and I'm like, I ended here because I'm moving into something else. But my goal is to try to mind screw the reader to read more. And it's the same thing with the comic book. When you turn a page, I'm trying to make you turn a page for a reason. That
Mhm.
last panel on one page is going to coax you into, well, what's going to happen on the next one? And then boom, I might hit you with something really big and explosive and then bring you down a little bit and then move you over to pages. Like everything I do with my comics is intentional. Even you opening up a comic to the middle, like I write this because this is the middle of my comic. And I feel like these 2 pages are important. So I wrote everything up leading up to that to make sure that the middle of this comic book, because that's what people open up quickly, right? They'll just open up the
Yep.
middle.
Yep.
That's how it sits, you know?
Yep.
This better be good. Because that's the first thing
Yeah.
that people go, oh, this is a lot. This actually looks pretty interesting. So I intentionally make sure I'm hitting. I'm like, oh, I'm getting ready. I'm getting for the middle of this comic. This is one of my big parts, you know? So all of my scripting up to that point is leading to that, you know?
Dude, that's smart. That's like smart on your planning to the T. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Looking at just figuring out like, okay, I'm at a convention. Your book is just sitting there.
Yeah.
How is your book naturally going to open when someone views
Yeah.
it? What am I? That's smart. I love that. Again, not enough. I don't consider that. Not enough people consider that when they're writing their
Right.
script or formatting it. That's
Right.
brilliant.
Well, they say in writing, even when they get, like, if you send a script to somebody, they'll look at the first 2 pages, because that's an introduction to the world. That's the opening scene. Okay, how intriguing is that? And they go right to the middle of your script.
Yeah, that's interesting.
If it's running around in a circle and they haven't got, because that's the midpoint of the story. The midpoint of the story is it's a fake win or a fake loss. This main character has either won something that they thought was going to win the whole, they did something they thought was going to win, but they're wrong, or it looks like they had a total loss, but they're kind of still in the game. If they don't see that right in the middle, and they'll maybe give you 3 pages just in case.
Yeah.
If they'll throw the script away, because who cares how we got to the end? It's going to end. So my thing is, like, I use those same parameters with my story. Comic book, that was a very big sequence of events that happens right on these 2 pages. And they're brother and sister pages. So I know you're looking at both of these pages at the same time, And so how critical is that? Because there's this narrative about what happens with the zombies in my story. And you have Dr. Greg talking to Eris about it. And in like the next page, we actually have this swooping narrative, and you actually see it playing out about how this works with this hive mind of zombies. So I'm very much, and that's my challenge is for me, when I nail it, it's like, man, that was rewarding. That was good. That's exactly what I needed to do,
Dude, I love that. You have like such a good concept and mindset and practice of business of, collaboration with people, with growing, with community, with storytelling, especially. Like, it's so exciting to see how your creations have just like grown out and how you've included everything.
Thank you.
This has been such an awesome hour of like craft, of inspiration, of just like grind as well. And focus. It seems you're very integral with every single step you take. And maybe that's probably like the inner athlete in you too. Like, just knowing like, I need to step properly this way. My form has to be perfect on this movement. Things like that kind of like play. When I would work out like crazy and do like Olympic lifts and everything, like that's when I knew I was like, okay, I'm focused. I'm like, I need to make sure everything's locked in just right. My legs have to be this way. My back has to be this way. And that was perfect execution. And that's how you grow and get stronger. And that's the same way you build a story as well. And I completely admire your movement from novels to comics to like what you're doing with this, because the way it all ties together is just a fun like way to collaborate in one way, but also just like you get to experience everything as a creator. Like, you're not just restricting yourself. Well, as we sign off here, do you have any last words or like words of advice for like creators like writing their scripts and getting stuck or like not finishing their stories?
The key is the outline. I've met so many creators, and I do this at the conventions because I do a lot of the paneling too, and a lot of it is one of my most popular ones is transcribing novels into comics. And people want to know, I got a novel idea, how do I make a comic? And they might go back and forth. And my thing and my biggest advice is you need an outline. I will not tell you how many people are writing without outlines, and I don't know how you do that.
I don't know either.
And they're just rambling. And I say, well, that's why your story's not done yet. You have no idea what you're doing with it, So whether it's a comic script or a novel, you have to have the outline. Once the outline is done, now you just write off of the outline. But the outline is the most important aspect of writing. And once you have that established, you can gun it. You can go for it.
I love it. So great, Braxton. Thank you so much for this conversation, for your time today. Do you want to give any shout outs to anyone you know, and also where we could find your work as well?
Okay, cool. Remember CosbyMediaProductions.com. In there, you'll see everybody. You'll see all of our artists. You'll see tabs for Star Child Comics, me and our team, the novels that go with that. You'll see the CMPDSU, the Dedicated Superhero Universe. You have a page of all of those stories. in there. You have our storefront, which has all of our comics that you can buy. You'll read a little bit about me and my wife, CEO, owner of the company. And then also you get all the links. You'll get our Instagram there. You get our Twitter. You get our Facebook. So yeah, we're constantly pushing out stuff. We got 2 new great stories come out at the end of October. We've still got more coming from Dragon One. We got some more Metatron. I was excited to find out that he just finished that new book. And of course, the Cape issue 2 finally will be dropping before the end of the year. And right now, we've got a Kickstarter going on for Broken, the Broken series, Dystopian. We got book 1, which is the novel. Book 2 is the comic, already done. But we've got the graphic novel, and we need the funding. We need some support. So get on there and pick a reward. There's even some 3 package deals. You can actually get all 3. You can just buy the digital for $5, so you can get something in there is for you, but jump on there, support us. And I'm going to keep pushing out stories till I run out of money, I guess, or ideas, which I don't think I'm gonna run out of those.
Yeah. I want to probably run out first. I feel you there 100% in this economy.
Yeah.
Braxton, thank you so much. This has been a blast. I really can't wait to dive into more of your work. And whenever you have a new project on, please hit us up for a spotlight.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. This has been great.
And to all of our audience, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Inspired Ink. Don't forget, we have new episodes coming out every Tuesday, live Spilled Ink drawing show on Thursday nights. Keep an eye out on all of our spotlights. We're going to have so many of them coming out, even more than our episodes of Inspired Ink. So look out for all of these amazing creators that we're putting the spotlight on. And as always, stay creative and stay inspired. Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of Inspired Ink featuring Braxton Cosby. If you're a comic creator ready to bring your vision to life, look no further than Comix Wellspring. We're not just printers, we're your partners in creativity. With our exceptional customer service, you'll never feel lost in the process. Need your comics fast? Our lightning quick turnaround times have got you covered. And for those big ideas you have, our industry-leading bulk pricing options make large print runs a breeze. Don't let your masterpiece gather dust on your hard drive. Click the link down below and let's turn your pages into reality.